15th Amendment. The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state on account of race. For an originalist and a textualist, that is clear text as I see it, but when asked whether or not the president has any authority to unilaterally deny that right to vote for a person based on race or even gender, are you saying you can't answer that question?
Senator, I just referenced the 14th and 15th Amendments, the same one that you just repeated back to me, that do prohibit discrimination on the basis of race in voting. So as I said, I don't know how else I can say it, the Constitution contains provisions that prohibit discrimination on the basis of race in voting.
But whether a president can unilaterally deny, you're not going to answer yes or no.
Well, Senator, you've asked a couple different questions about what the president might be able to unilaterally do, and I think that I really can't say anything more than I'm not going to answer hypotheticals.
It strains originalism. If the clear wording of the Constitution establishes a right and you will not acknowledge it.
Well, Senator, it would strain the canons of conduct, which don't permit me to offer off-the-cuff reactions or any opinions outside of the judicial decision-making process. It would strain Article 3, which prevents me from deciding legal issues outside the context of cases and controversies, and as Justice Ginsburg said, it would display disregard for the whole judicial process.
So then let's take it to the case we've discussed before, Cantor versus Barr.
Okay.
Your 37-page dissent in this case.
Mm-hmm.
And yesterday, the junior senator from Missouri, in an attempt to rehabilitate the witness, asked you, you never say that the right to vote is somewhat secondary or less than any other right. Is that fair to say? And you answered, yes, that is fair to say. I never said that. I have read and reread this. I'm not ready for a question on the final, but I've read and reread your dissent on this. I'd like to read to you what you wrote on this very question asked by the senator from Missouri. In sum, well, I think we need to establish what this case is about for those who may not know or remember. Ricky Cantor. Ricky Cantor was a con man, lived in Wisconsin. He manufactured some kind of shoe insert, a pad, and tried to sell it to people who had diabetes or some foot problems. He wanted the Medicare to say that it was approved. They didn't. He sold it anyway and made that representation. When it was all over, it came crashing around him. He cheated Medicare out of $375,000. He was found guilty of a count of mail fraud, paid $300,000 in penalties and fines. He paid out $27 million in a civil settlement and then spent a year in federal prison. So this was not some run-of-the-mill miscreant. This was a fellow who was a con artist. He came to the federal courts and said, this is unfair. I've served my year in prison. Now I want to buy a gun. And the law says I can't buy a gun if I'm guilty of a felony. And the court said, sorry, Ricky, you can't buy a gun because you are guilty of a felony. Even the Heller decision, Justice Scalia said that felonies and mental illness could continue to disqualify a person from buying a gun in this country. 2 out of 3 judges who heard this case said, that's right, that's the law. Sorry, Ricky, no AK-47 for your birthday. But then you took a look at it and reached the opposite conclusion and did extensive research and delving into history about whether or not violent felonies should be distinguished from regular felonies. And you concluded that you believed that a person who has just been found guilty or convicted of a felony should not be disqualified from their Second Amendment rights, that should be confined to those who were dangerous, guilty of a violent felony. Here's what you said to go to the question that was asked by the senator from Missouri. Here are your words. In sum, the available evidence suggests that the right to arms differs from rights that depend on civic virtue for enjoyment. The Second Amendment confers an individual right intimately connected with the natural right of self-defense and not limited to civic participation. By the very terms of the civic rights argument then, the right to arms would have been treated differently than things like the right to vote or sit on juries. So here's what it boils down to. After Heller, after the decision, after Scalia's statement, you concluded that any felony can take away your right to vote, but only a violent felony can take away your right to purchase an AK-47. Why?
Senator, with respect, that's distorting my position. What I said in that case, which is what Heller said, and which is conventional in all discussions of this, to my knowledge, is that the right to vote is fundamental. However, it is an individual fundamental right that we possess, but we possess it as part of our civic responsibility for the common good. The same thing is true, for example, of jury service. Whereas individual rights, and this is again a distinction that's drawn in case law, individual rights benefit more the individual. And the entire dispute in Heller was that the majority thought that the Second Amendment was an individual right, and the dissent thought it was one that was a civic right, that was a right that people possessed, but they possessed for the benefit of society by participation in the militia. And it is a distortion of the case to say that I ever said that voting is a second-class right. That's simply not what that passage means.
You guys watching this shit? Did you guys see this shit? Holy shit. Did you see that shit? This shit? Did you watch any of this shit? Because I haven't watched this shit, but I watched some other shit. Holy shit, right? With the shit that's going on? With the fucking shit? Holy shit. Hello. Tear whore and make it pies and New York squids showed up and then said politics. Oh, I'm out. Yes, it's going to be one of those. You know, gotta say, I've been on the uptrend lately. You know, YouTube, we hit 20,000, and the way things have been going up, we're probably going to hit 21,000 subs on YouTube, within the next, I don't know, month or two or something. Man, the subs just coming in, the KSP speedrun and everything. The worst thing you could do right now, if you gave a fuck about YouTube, which if you do, you shouldn't, is, do a live stream, talk about some politics. So here we are. Welcome to a Ronan Pawn live stream. Hello, I am the Ronan Pawn. Twitch.tv/Ronan Pawn. Hello, the Light Guy 89. Hey, how's it going? Congrats on the New World Record. Thank you very much. New World Record in Kerbal Space Program, any percent science category. Still not where I want it, so I'm not submitting it. We're going to get it sub 2 hours, and then I'll start thinking about submitting it, because we know we can go sub 2 hours on that, and run just didn't fall out well at the very end. Is this some American things that make it pies? Yes. And I have such a, shockingly, I have such a large European audience. I do that because I used to look into my channel's history. Actually, don't look into the channel's history. I don't want you knowing. But I have such a large European audience. I actually kind of wanted to introduce some of you to the state of America in a more direct way than maybe, you're familiar with. And this, in particular, isn't it. This is the confirmation hearings from today. This was day 3. But there are some things that happened on a previous day that I'd like to show you, possibly while I just sit here and you listen to them in their entirety, so that you can understand what America is. But we'll get to it, or we won't. I don't know. I came here because I was watching this shit, and I'm just walking around the house in circles going, what the fucking goddamn with this and that and the other thing. And I thought, I shouldn't waste all that energy without an audience. I should be here in front of the microphone going, what the fuck with this shit and this and that and the other thing. So now we're here. Everyone talks American politics for some reason. Well, when your nation is on fire. Hey, Pawn, it's been a while. How have you been? Hello, Deathbringer 501st. I bet she was hot in her 30s. What do you mean she was hot in her 30s? She's, listen, all right? This is not about any of that. But I will say, that's an attractive lady. That's an attractive lady. I like her voice. I like her personality. She's very kind of listen, I'm just, she's got a good demeanor here for these proceedings. Wouldn't fucking put her on any goddamn Supreme Courts, but, I'd hit that. Why are we watching this? Because this is what I'm doing today, apparently. I was probably going to just run more KSP, and then I fell into a fucking rabbit hole. I got a thing, I don't actually, look at Twitter, but Twitter's very good at sucking you in by sending you an email with, top things that are going along. And that's kind of the only way that I get any news these days is I see what Twitter's, saying is going on. And I click on 2 or 3 of the 25 links they send me in my email. I'm like, oh, that's what's going on. And I saw that this was going on. I saw specifically something I want to show you. And we'll get to that. And I got sucked down this rabbit hole, and I sat here and I watched the day 3 of the confirmation hearing, Supreme Court for Judge Amy Coney Barrett, according to the top line that I'm just reading to you in case you can't see. It's up there. And I started watching it, and I watched one Democrat speak. This is something that I hadn't watched. I haven't seen Dick Durbin and her talk yet. But I watched one Democrat speak and ask her a lot of questions. It was in particular, I wrote down the name Cory Booker. Seems like a decent fellow, one who I might want to vote for if he were in my district, but he's not. He's not in my state or anything. Cory Booker speak and come nearly to, like, definitely holding back tears as he's talking about the disenfranchisement of black and brown people in the United States through the jurisprudence system, which this woman would have, the highest seat in the land over, and looking for her to have any, like, substantive awareness of that, as well as take any position on or make any statement about that, and her saying nothing, him being very fucking polite in everything that he did while he's making these statements and while he's having a conversation with her, and her just having, like, no meaningful response to, the fact that at the police level, at the level of enforcement of the law, black and brown people are over-arrested. And then at the prosecutorial level within our jurisprudence system in America, statistically over-prosecuted, statistically far more shoved into agreeing that they were guilty, even in conditions, even in circumstances where they weren't guilty of anything. And then at the, when a judge finally gets to hear some of these cases that mostly the prosecutors have just intimidated black and brown defendants into not actually bringing before the court, then a judge gets to hear them. And then we find out that from policing through prosecution to, in fact, at the bench, they're over-sentenced by 20% more. They get 20% on average, longer sentences than white people in similar standings with the same charges. What do you have to say about that, Amy Coney Barrett? Well, it's it's bad, I guess, if those statistics are right. Have you ever, like, read any books or any documents or any published work that are on this topic? I mean, you're literally a teacher of the law. You've practiced the law, you've taught the law. Have you ever read a book, perhaps? Well, you were teaching it maybe to some other students about this and how this affects the entire zeitgeist and culture of America, and how much the oppression is fucking alive and well and sitting on the chests of minorities in America today. Can you cite anything? They send us emails sometimes that say things. No? Okay. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and just submit submit for the court these records of, what is this again? I'm sorry, 620 lawyers, 100 law professors who say, and I quote, "Jesus Christ, not her! Nobody but her! Fuck!" I'd like to submit that for the official record of the Senate proceeding hearings now. Can I? That's the one that I watched. And then I watched 2 Republicans speak to her. And, it was far more civil and just fun. Asking her about, who does laundry in your house? Oh, it's the kids. Okay, so you try and get the kids to do it, but they don't do it much. Oh, that's so humanizing. Tell me more, Supreme Court nominee, about whether you do the laundry, or the kids do the laundry, or the hubby does the laundry. Tell me more. Because this is what I'm going to spend my time with while we're doing a confirmation hearing. I'm a representative for the Republican Party. From Louisiana, too, So get a little bit more credit for that down-home Southern kind of, put a little drawl on it, and, man, it just sounds like he's being civil, doesn't it? Instead of he's wasting your fucking time with bullshit propaganda. It helps. Anyway, fuck's sake, Pawn, politics are horrible to foreign countries, aren't they? She's good, yeah. Second, it's entertaining to talk about American politics, and you're old if you think she is okay. Second, didn't know Pawn was into 50-ish women with anti-abortion views. I'm just saying, enough of these. And, you know, somebody else said, you know, I bet she was pretty when she was young. She's fucking, that's an attractive lady. Shut the fuck up. Don't. There are so many better places at which you could attack this human being than her appearance or manner or decorum. Let's do that today. No, I don't know. My favorite video game, Politics, is Sopaman. And is this related to that guy that got suffocated by the cop? No, none of what they were talking about anyway. But you know, everything in America, it's a touchstone there of like a representative instance of the several hundred per year. Hello. Oh, wait. Dramatian, that freeze frame looks like she's going to ask, would you like me to make cookies? Right? She, I like the fact that her hair isn't that well done, you know? I wonder how much, like, they put into that. I mean, that fucking, like, that shirt with that thing definitely was like a fucking advisor from the party came on and said, let's make it. But the fact that her hair is on, you know, a judge should not be well groomed, is what I'm saying. A judge should not look like a fucking news anchor, is what I'm saying. And she doesn't look like that. And that's, you know, probably part of their propaganda. Like they had somebody come in and muss up her hair a little bit, you know. They took some static shit and made sure that there were some frizzies going on. Because she's a woman who doesn't have time to look like a fucking actress when she stands in front of the television, which is what you want in a justice, and that's what they want to sell you. Hello, may I ask what side you're on, says Cozy Patman. I didn't really have a side other than, yeah, I'm on the no side. And I just watched a little bit of it today. You know, it's not a particularly informed opinion that I have. And that's why the title of this video is the title of this video. That freeze frame. Oh, sorry. Am I allowed to have an opinion? I'm Australian. Yes. I actually don't know what I'm going to say. Just this is what I was doing today, and I felt passionately about it and kind of wanted to, you know, come on here and see what you guys have to say so that I could shout at you about my opinions in rebuttal to whatever it is that you say. Holy shit, that's loud in my headphones. Is that loud in your headphones? Is that what, do I have my headphones set up correctly? No, I don't. That would be the problem there. Let's go down to -12 on my headphones. What I would like you to be aware of is Senator Whitehouse speaking on day 2 of the hearings. This wasn't today's hearings, but today. This is what got me in. This is what pulled me down the rabbit hole of, you know, actually watching the hearings and whatnot. Was I saw some snippets of what Senator Whitehouse had said during his time in day 2, where he chose to take the time to not have any interaction with Judge Barrett here, and instead speak to how we arrived to these proceedings and in what state we have arrived to these proceedings exclusively. And then apparently he was going to ask her more questions today. I haven't seen those. I want to see those. If Barrett or if Whitehouse was there today, I tuned in too late to catch him. So I want to find those in the proceedings. But I really, 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 especially for, you know, viewers who are not in America, who don't know, you know, who have just a general vague kind of sense about American politics, like I have about general vague sense in New Zealand politics, which is, I don't know shit about New Zealand politics. I would love for you to watch this with me now.
Judge Barrett, you can take a bit of a breather on your return to the committee, because what I want to do is go through with the people who are watching this now the conversation that you and I had when we spoke on the telephone. You were kind enough to hear out a presentation that I made, and I intend to ask some questions in that area, but it doesn't make sense to ask questions if I haven't laid the predicate, particularly for viewers who are watching this. So I guess the reason that I want to do this is because people who are watching this need to understand that this small hearing room and the little TV box that you're looking at, the little screen that you're looking at, are a little bit like the frame of a puppet theater. And if you only look at what's going on in the puppet theater, you're not going to understand the whole story. You're not going to understand the real dynamic of what is going on here. And you're certainly not going to understand forces outside of this room who are pulling strings and pushing sticks and causing the puppet theater to react. So first, let me say, why do I think outside forces are here pulling strings? Well, part of it is behavior. We have colleagues here who supported you, this nominee, before there was a nominee. That's a little unusual. We have the political ram job that we have already complained of, driving this process through at breakneck speed in the middle of a pandemic while the Senate is closed for safety reasons and while we're doing nothing about the COVID epidemic around us. We have some very awkward 180s from colleagues. Mr. Chairman, you figure in this. Our leader said back when it was Garland versus Gorsuch, that of course, the American people should have a say in the court's direction. Of course, said Mitch McConnell. That's long gone. Senator Grassley said the American people shouldn't be denied a voice. That's long gone. Senator Cruz said, you don't do this in an election year. That's long gone. And our chairman made his famous hold the tape promise, if an opening comes in the last year of President Trump's term, we'll wait till the next election. That's gone too. So there is a lot of hard to explain hypocrisy and rush taking place right now. And my experience around politics is that when you find hypocrisy in the daylight, look for power in the shadows. Now, people may say, well, what does all this matter? This is a political parlor game. It's no big deal. Well, there's some pretty high stakes here that we've been talking about here on our side. And I'll tell you three of them right here. Roe versus Wade, Obergefell, and the Obamacare cases. Here's the GOP platform, the Republican platform, the platform of my colleagues on the other side of this aisle say that a Republican president will appoint judges who will reverse Roe, Obergefell, and the Obamacare cases. So if you have a family member with an interest in some autonomy over their body under Roe versus Wade, the ability to have a marriage, to have friends marry, to have a niece or a daughter or a son marry someone of their same sex, you've got a stake. And if you're one of the millions and millions of Americans who depend on the Affordable Care Act, you've got a stake. It's not just the platform. Over and over again, let's start by talking about the Affordable Care Act. Here's the president talking about this litigation that we're gearing up this nominee for November 10th. In this litigation, he said, we want to terminate health care under Obamacare. That is the president's statement. So when we react to that, don't act as if we're making this stuff up. This is what President Trump said. This is what your party platform says. Reverse the Obamacare cases. Senator after senator, including many in this committee, filed briefs saying that the Affordable Care Act should be thrown out by courts. Why is it surprising for us to be concerned that you want this nominee to do what you want nominees to do? One quick stop on NFIB v. Sebelius, because a lot of this has to do with money. This is an interesting comparison. National Federation of Independent Businesses, until it filed the NFIB versus Sebelius case had its biggest donation ever of $21,000. In the year that it went to work on the Affordable Care Act, 10 wealthy donors gave $10 million. Somebody deserves a thank you. So let's go on to Roe v. Wade. Same thing. Same thing. The president has said that reversing Roe v. Wade will happen automatically because he's putting pro-life justices on the court. Why would we not take him at his word? The Republican Party platform says it will reverse Roe. Why would we not comment on that and take you at your word? Senators here, including Senator Hawley, have said, I will vote only for nominees who acknowledge that Roe v. Wade is wrongly decided. And they're pledged to vote for this nominee. Do the math. That's a really simple equation to run. The Republican brief in June Medical said Roe should be overruled. So don't act surprised when we ask questions about whether that's what you're up to here. And finally, out in the ad world that you have spared yourself wisely, Judge Barrett, the Susan B. Anthony Foundation is running advertisements right now saying that you are set to give our pro-life country the court that it deserves. There's the ad with the voiceover. She's set. She's set. And then Roe, Obamacare case.
Just want to let you know at this point in the video, the American public's opinion on abortion, which is what he's talking about here, if you don't know about Roe v. Wade, is 61% believe abortion is should be legal under most circumstances. 39% believe that abortion should be illegal in most circumstances. Our pro-life country is what that ad says about Justice Barrett, about, de facto Justice Barrett, because these proceedings are run by a Republican House with a Republican president, so it's just going to happen regardless. Let's continue.
And Obergefell, gay marriage. National Organization for Marriage, the big group that opposes same-sex marriage, says in this proceeding, all our issues are at stake. Republican platform says it wants to reverse Obergefell. And the Republican brief filed in the case said same-sex relationships don't fall within any constitutional protection. So when we say the stakes are high on this, it's because you've said the stakes are high on this. You have said that's what you want to do. So how are people going about doing it? What is the scheme here? Let me start with this one.
The scheme. It's true, though.
In all cases, there's big anonymous money behind various lanes of activity. One lane of activity is through the conduit of the Federalist Society. It's was managed by a guy named Leonard Leo, and it's taken over the selection of judicial nominees. How do we know that to be the case? Because Trump has said so over and over again. His White House counsel said so. So we have an anonymously funded group controlling judicial selection run by this guy, Leonard Leo. Then in another lane, we have, again, anonymous funders running through something called the Judicial Crisis Network, which is run by Carrie Severino, and it's doing PR and campaign ads for Republican judicial nominees.
So I'm going to just set you up for something a little bit later here. Carrie Severino, okay? We've got Leonard Leo running this particular political financial ring, and then we got Carrie Severino running a completely separate one. They're not connected. They are two different things. Just bear that in mind. Remember where Carrie sits in this chart for later.
It got single $17 million donation in the Garland-Gorsuch contest. It got another single $17 million donation to support Kavanaugh. Somebody, perhaps the same person, spent $35 million to influence the makeup of the United States Supreme Court. Tell me that's good. And then over here, you have a whole array of legal groups, also funded by dark money, which have a different role. They bring cases to the court. They don't wind their way to the court, Your Honor. They get shoved to the court by these legal groups, many of which ask to lose below so they can get quickly to the court to get their business done there. And then they turn up in a chorus, an orchestrated chorus of amici. Now, I've had a chance to have a look at this, and I was in a case, actually, as an amicus myself, the Consumer Financial Protection Board case. And in that case, there were 11 amicus briefs filed, and every single one of them was a group funded by something called Donors Trust. Donors Trust is a gigantic identity scrubbing device for the right wing so that it says Donors Trust is the donor without whoever the real donor is. It doesn't have a business. It doesn't have a business plan. It doesn't do anything. It's just an identity scrubber. And this group here, the Bradley Foundation, funded 8 out of the 11 briefs. That seems weird to me when you have amicus briefs coming in little flotillas that are funded by the same groups but nominally separate in the court. So I actually attached this to my brief as an appendix. Center for Media and Democracy saw it, and they did better work. They went on to say which foundations funded the brief writers in that CFPB case. Here's the Bradley Foundation for $5.6 million to those groups. Here's Donors Trust, $23 million to those brief writing groups. The grand total across all the donor groups was $68 million to the groups that were filing amicus briefs, pretending that they were different groups. And it's not just in the Consumer Financial Protection Board case. You might say, well, that was just a one-off. Here's Janus, the anti-labor case that had a long trail through the court, through Friedrichs and through Knox and through other decisions. And SourceWatch and ProPublica did some work about this. Here's Donors Trust and Donors Capital Fund, and here's the Bradley Foundation, and they totaled giving $45 million to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 groups that filed amicus briefs pretending to be different groups, and both of the lawyer groups in the case. Funded by Donors Trust, funded by Bradley Foundation in Janus. This is happening over and over and over again, and it goes beyond just the briefs. It goes beyond just the amicus presentations. The Federalist Society, remember this group that is acting as the conduit and that Donald Trump has said is doing his judicial selection? They're getting money from the same foundations. From Donors Trust, $16.7 million. From the Bradley Foundation, $1.37 million. From the same group of foundations total, $33 million. So you can start to look at these and you can start to tie them together. The legal groups, all the same funders over and over again, bringing the cases and providing this orchestrated chorus of amici. Then the same group also funds the Federalist Society over here. The Washington Post wrote a big expose about this, and that made Leonard Leo a little hot, a little bit like a burned agent. So he had to jump out, and he went off to go and do anonymously funded voter suppression work. Guess who jumped in to take over the selection process in this case for Judge Barrett? Carrie Severino made the hop. So once again, ties right in together. So Center for Media and Democracy has done a little bit more research. Here's a Bradley Foundation memo that they've published. The Bradley Foundation is reviewing a grant application asking for money for this orchestrated amicus process. And what do they say in the staff recommendation? It is important to orchestrate, their word, not mine, important to orchestrate high-caliber amicus efforts before the court. They also note that Bradley has done previous philanthropic investments in the actual underlying legal actions. So Bradley is funding, what do they call, philanthropically investing in the underlying legal action and then giving money to groups to show up in the orchestrated chorus of amici. That can't be good. And it goes on, because they also found this email. This email comes from an individual at the Bradley Foundation, and it asks our friend Leonard Leo, who used to run the selection process, is there a 501c3 nonprofit to which Bradley could direct any support of the 2 Supreme Court amicus projects other than Donors Trust? I don't know why they wanted to avoid the reliable identity scrubber Donors Trust, but for some reason they did. So Leonard Leo writes back on Federalist Society address. So don't tell me that it isn't Federalist Society business. On Federalist Society, on his address, he writes back, yes, send it to the Judicial Education Project, which could take and allocate the money. And guess who works for the Judicial Education Project? Carrie Severino, who also helped select this nominee running the Trump Federalist Society selection process. So the connections abound. In the Washington Post article, they point out that the Judicial Crisis Network's office is on the same hallway in the same building as the Federalist Society, and that when they sent their reporter to talk to somebody at the Judicial Crisis Network, somebody from the Federalist Society came down to let them up. This, more and more, looks like it's not 3 schemes, but it's 1 scheme, with the same funders selecting judges, funding campaigns for the judges, and then showing up in court in these orchestrated amicus flotillas to tell the judges what to do. On the Judicial Crisis Network, you've got the Leonard Leo connection, obviously. She hopped in to take over for him with the Federalist Society. You've got the campaigns that I've talked about, where they take $17 million contributions. That's a big check to write, $17 million, to campaign for Supreme Court nominees. No idea who that is or what they got for it. You've got briefs that she wrote. The Republican senators filed briefs in that NFIB case signed by Ms. Severino. The woman who helped choose this nominee has written briefs for Republican senators attacking the ACA. Don't say the ACA is not an issue here. And by the way, the Judicial Crisis Network funds the Republican Attorneys General. It funds RAGA, the Republican Attorney General's Association, and it funds individual Republican Attorneys General. And guess who the plaintiffs are in the Affordable Care Act case? Republican Attorneys General. Trump joined them because he didn't want to defend, so he's in with the Republican Attorneys General. But here's the Judicial Crisis Network campaigning for Supreme Court nominees, writing briefs for senators against the Affordable Care Act, supporting the Republicans who are bringing this case, and leading the selection process for this nominee. Here's the page off the brief. Here's where they are. Mitch McConnell, and on through the list. Senator Collins, Senator Cornyn, Senator Hoeven, Senator, who's still here? Marco Rubio. It's a huge assortment of Republican senators who Carrie Severino wrote a brief for against the Affordable Care Act. So,
yeah, no, I'm going to stop and actually say that around. Marco Rubio, one of 2 Hispanic representatives in the American Senate. Now, if you have Google, you can find out what the percentage population of America is Hispanic and black. And then what you can Google as well is how many senators are of Hispanic or black, and what you'll find is that there are, I believe, 2 Hispanic representatives, Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio, which I'm going to go out on a limb here and say don't represent any kind of Hispanic that they don't actually represent, that technically somewhere in their background. And then I believe black representatives, I think we got 4. And what you'll find is that about 30% of America is black and Hispanic, and they are represented in a House with in the Senate, where there's 100 representatives, by 6 people. 30% of the American populace, their perspective is represented by 6% of the Senate. Just little extra there for you. Carry on, though.
This is to me, pretty big deal. I've never seen this around any court that I've ever been involved with, where there's this much dark money and this much influence being used. Here's how the Washington Post summed it up. This is a conservative activist behind-the-scenes campaign to remake the nation's courts, and it's a $250 million dark money operation. $250 million is a lot of money to spend if you're not getting anything for it. So that raises the question, what are they getting for it? Well, I showed the slide earlier on the Affordable Care Act and on Obergefell and on Roe versus Wade. That's where they lost. But with another judge, that could change. That's where the contest is. That's where the Republican Party platform tells us to look at how they want judges to rule, to reverse Roe, to reverse the Obamacare cases, and to reverse Obergefell and take away gay marriage. That is their stated objective and plan. Why not take them at their word? But there's another piece of it, and that is not what's ahead of us, but what's behind us. What's behind us is now 80 cases, Mr. Chairman, 80 cases under Chief Justice Roberts that have these characteristics. 1, they were decided 5-4 by a bare majority. 2, the 5-4 majority was partisan in the sense that not one Democratic appointee joined the 5. I refer to that group as the Roberts 5. It changes a little bit, as with Justice Scalia's death, for instance, but there's been a steady Roberts 5 that has delivered now 80 of these decisions. And the last characteristic of them is that there is an identifiable Republican donor interest in those cases. And in every single case, that donor interest won. It was an 80-0, 5-4 partisan rout, ransacking. And it's important to look at where those cases went, because they're not about big public issues like getting rid of the Affordable Care Act, undoing Roe versus Wade, and undoing same-sex marriage. They're about power. And if you look at those 80 decisions, they fall into 4 categories over and over and over again. 1, unlimited and dark money in politics. Citizens United is the famous one, but it's continued since with McCutcheon, and we've got one coming up now. Always the 5 for unlimited money in politics, never protecting against dark money in politics, despite the fact that they said it was going to be transparent. And who wins when you allow unlimited dark money in politics? A very small group. The ones who have unlimited money to spend and a motive to spend it in politics. They win, everybody else loses. And if you're looking at who might be behind this, let's talk about people with unlimited money to spend and a motive to do it. We'll see how that goes. Next, knock the civil jury down. Whittle it down to a nub. The civil jury was in the Constitution, in the Bill of Rights, in our darn Declaration of Independence. But it's annoying to big corporate powers. because you can swagger your way as a big corporate power through Congress. You can go and tell the president you put money into to elect what to do. He'll put your stooges at the EPA. It's all great until you get to the civil jury, because they have an obligation, as you know, Judge Barrett. They have an obligation under the law to be fair to both parties, irrespective of their size. You can't bribe them. You're not allowed to. It's a crime to tamper with a jury. It's standard practice to tamper with Congress. And they make decisions based on the law. If you're used to being the boss and swaggering your way around the political side, you don't want to be answerable before a jury. And so one after another, these 85-4 decisions have knocked down, whittled away at the civil jury, a great American institution. Third, first was unlimited dark money. Second was demean and diminish the civil jury. Third is weaken regulatory agencies. A lot of this money, I'm convinced, is polluter money. The Coke Industries is a polluter. The fossil fuel industry is a polluter. Who else would be putting buckets of money into this and wanting to hide who they are behind donors' trust or other schemes? And what if you're a big polluter, what do you want? You want weak regulatory agencies. You want ones that you can box up and run over to Congress and get your friends to fix things for you in Congress. Over and over and over again, these decisions are targeted at regulatory agencies to weaken their independence and weaken their strength. And if you're a big polluter, a weak regulatory agency is your idea of a good day. And the last thing is in politics, in voting. Why on earth the court made the decision a factual decision, not something appellate courts are ordinarily supposed to make, as I understand it, Judge Barrett, the factual decision that nobody needed to worry about minority voters in pre-clearance states being discriminated against, or that legislators would try to knock back their ability to vote. These five made that finding in Shelby County against bipartisan legislation from both houses of Congress, hugely passed on no factual record. They just decided that that was a problem that was over, on no record, with no basis, because it got them to the result that we then saw. What followed? State after state after state passed voter suppression laws. One so badly targeting African Americans that the two courts said it was surgically tailored to get after minority voters. And gerrymandering, the other great control. Bulk gerrymandering, where you go into a state, like the Red Map Project did in Ohio and Pennsylvania, and you pack Democrats so tightly into a few districts that all the others become Republican majority districts. And in those states, you send a delegation to Congress that has a huge majority of Republican members, like 13-5, as I recall, in a state where the party of the five, actually won the popular vote. You've sent a delegation to Congress that is out of step with the popular vote of that state. And court after court figured out how to solve that. And the Supreme Court said, nope, 5-4 again. Nope, we're not going to take an interest in that question. In all these areas where it's about political power for big special interests and people who want to fund campaigns and people who want to get their way through politics without actually showing up, doing it behind donors' trust and other groups, doing it through these schemes, over and over and over again, you see the same thing. 80 decisions, Judge Barrett. 80 decisions, an 80-0 sweep. I don't think you've tried cases, but some cases, the issue is bias and discrimination. And if you're making a bias case as a trial lawyer, Lindsey Graham is a hell of a good trial lawyer. If he wanted to make a bias case, Dick Durbin's a hell of a good trial lawyer. If they wanted to make a bias case and they could show an 80-0 pattern, A, that's admissible, and B, I'd love to make that argument to the jury. I'd be really hard-pressed to be the lawyer saying, no, 80-0 is just a bunch of flukes. All 5-4, all partisan, all this way. So Something is not right around the court. And dark money has a lot to do with it. Special interests have a lot to do with it. Donors' trust and whoever's hiding behind donors' trust has a lot to do with it. And the Bradley Foundation orchestrating its amici over at the court has a lot to do with it. So I thank you, Judge Barrett, for listening to me now a second time. And I think this gives you a chance for you and I to tee up an interesting conversation tomorrow. And I thank my colleagues for hearing me out.
Thank you, Senator Whitehouse.
Thank you, Senator Whitehouse. We now return to twitch.tv/RunandPawn's coverage of the ongoing destruction of America. How's it going there? Pawn, coming to you. We're on fire! All right, we'll be back with him after this brief 7-minute live stream break. Note our advertisers, of which there are none, and stay tuned for more in America, falling to shit. If you want to actually get to my place where I talk about shit and stuff, because we're going to do that. But first, I'm going to go pee. So 7-minute break. Pawn not out. am the Ronan Pawn. Welcome to, presumably, I haven't looked at the numbers, but one of my most underviewed live streams in a while. Welcome to confirmation hearings for what's her name, Barrett, Justice Barrett, or would-be Justice Barrett, will be Justice Barrett, because we don't actually have a functional system of anything in this country. That's the upbeat music can go away now. We're back to depressing shit. Welcome back to the live stream. We've just watched Senator Whitehouse speaking on the second day of the hearings and not actually addressing Barrett at all, literally just laying the groundwork. And by the way, here, I'm going to go ahead and drop this link in chat in case any of you want to review it. It's rather dense, but once you penetrate, wrap your head around it, what he is describing there, it has almost nothing to do with Judge Amy Coney Barrett, but it is setting the groundwork for the people who are representing her, what they have done, what they have supported, the money that they have put behind tampering with the American public, behind the American legal system, behind American, justice, laws. And I say those things, it's like, well, you just said the same thing 3 times. I'm talking about, like, laws passed by Congress, laws supported by the United States of America, the people, laws that have a majority, in contrast to some of the laws that are on the books, because people who were put in positions of power by people who were in other positions of power who appointed them in order to make the decisions that those people in power wanted to make, not based on statistics, factual reality, or the opinions of the American public. These are different things that I'm speaking about, even though it sounds like it could all be the same thing. He was laying the groundwork for how it is that we come to this day where we find ourselves, after having heard the leaders of the Republican Party back in 2016 and 2018 again, and saying that and they were on the record, fucking Lindsey Graham was like specific and says, hold me to the fire, save the videotape of this. If there is a opening on the Supreme Court and the primary has already begun for the next election, especially, and he didn't say this, but, it was in the wake of, this was the context of the questioning that was coming to him, especially in the wake of that we are now onto our, how many is it now for the Republicans? Is it 92 presidents elected unpopularly, which is to say that a minority of the voters voted for that president, and yet that president became, that individual became the president. Even though less people voted for them than the other candidate, that president took office because of the fucked up nature of our democracy in America. We just watched him set the stage for how it is that we come to Amy Barrett being nominated, the money that was behind her before she was even a nominee, people positioning her, people spending money, spending millions, tens of millions, not hundreds at that point, tens of millions of dollars on positioning her to be their girl, who have done all these other things, like undermining, who are out there. The Republican Party's, official platform position is, if we get the opportunity, listen to us, the heart of America, quote unquote, we are going to get rid of Roe v. Wade, get rid of the protection that allows a woman to have control over her own body when it comes to abortion. We're going to get rid of recent decisions that said, hey, you know what? If you want to get married, really doesn't matter whether you're a man wanting to marry a man, or a man wanting to marry a woman, or a woman wanting to marry a woman. You could get married and you will have the same protected rights. We're going to get rid of that shit too. He was setting the stage and just trying to bring America up to speed with where things stand and how our judicial systems actually function, and how our judicial systems are absolutely as much corrupted by the influence of money and these groups that are specifically created as ways to hide who it is that's funding something. No doubt you've seen something, you've heard something, maybe John Oliver talking about what is it called? AstroTurf campaigns. In the media, you'll see an ad and they're telling you, big government, federal government, the Senate and the Congress, they want to put a tax on soda pop. Can you believe that? Hey, Mr. Federal Government, my kids like soda pop, god damn it. I'm not going to stand by while you charge me an extra 3 cents per gallon. This is ridiculous. I'm going to fight back, and you should too. Vote today. And it turns out, of course, that no actual group that was created by an interested, lobby of American citizens, individuals, like they show in the commercial, a woman unpacking her fucking, getting out to the back of the trunk and pulling out the pop and everything and walking in, and she's got the kids walking in behind her and all that. None of them were involved in that shit. Who was involved in that shit was Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, It was the makers of Mountain Dew, which is Coca-Cola. But, it was the people who have the money vested in the interest who are saying, we don't want you to put an extra tax on our soda pop because people have an idea of what it's going to cost and we can't move the price up and, that kind of a thing. So they put out these AstroTurf campaigns where the whole goal is you take the money of fucking PepsiCo and you funnel it through organizations who, under the laws of America, this is why this shit is important. The laws that exist in America and the precedents and the rulings that have come down from Supreme Court and federal courts at lower levels beneath the Supreme Court, which is everywhere, they have the right and the ability to funnel their money from their corporation down through a transitory group that once it hits them, the money becomes completely anonymous. So there's no record of the fact that Coca-Cola paid this group. They donated to this group. So what happens is you create these organizations that have a very willful interest in order to brainwash the American public and give you the feeling that there's a grassroots movement coming from American citizens who don't want this thing or that thing or the other to go on. But what it actually is corporations trying to protect their own financial interests against the will of the American people, and then using their massive monetary resources in order to put propaganda, in the most literal dictionary sense of the word, propaganda out without the money trail coming back to them, without them having to say in the advertisement, as they would have to do in a civilized nation, as most in Europe, that this is a paid promotion by PepsiCo. They can take their millions, hundreds of millions of dollars and funnel it through a charitable organization that maybe they created and then say that this ad is brought to you by this charitable organization, which is the American People Against Higher Taxes on Soda Pop. That kind of shit is just part of our culture, the astroturfing, and what he was setting up in the video we just watched, which was, again, this Senator Whitehouse speaks at the second day of and all that stuff if you want to find out on your own, but I just put the link in chat. He was trying to show that this is where we stand right now, and that money is in our judicial system as well as in our Senate. Everybody in America knows, oh yeah, our fucking Senate is bought and paid for, at least half the House of Representatives is bought and paid for. And I mean, it's all bought and paid for. But, you have some representatives, I would say, in the House who are actually trying to represent people and having to play along with a dirty game. But the majority of our representatives are bought and owned at this point by people who, have power and money and can funnel money through places in order to support things, in order to make things happen for people who want to, be in positions of power, like, a Senate position, like a House position, like a Supreme Court nominee. And so almost, very little of that applied directly to Amy Coney Barrett here, except in the fact that a lot of that money that he was talking about, that dark money moving around, was already moving around to put her into position, to platform for her before she was even nominated by the Republican Party, and then even more money piled on once she was. And these interests that have been piling this money on are the same interests who are trying to do the four things that he listed at the near the end of his speech there, which is that, you know, the 80 sweep that he was talking about had everything to do, you know, what did it have to do with? Was it fucking gay rights? Was it abortion? No, it was about fucking people in power trying to maintain power, trying to keep people under their feet, trying to make sure that, you know, we're going to fill the skies with pollution and toxins, and, you know, you're going to check your fucking local newscast and it's going to say the air quality today is 45%. We want to keep doing that because it makes us money, and we don't live where you live because we live in the place where all the rich fuckers live. That money is behind her. And a Republican Senate who has, you know, just the Republican Party generally has continuously positioned themselves alongside and behind and with all of those corporate interests. And is now, and it's only like in the past year or two that they've caught on to, now they're trying to shout about how the Democrats are in bed with corporate interests because it's so obvious that the Republicans are. Now, like, somebody in their campaign finally said, oh, well, we should start shouting that they're the ones in bed. And it's not to say that the Democrats aren't, but the Republicans have been like the fucking bitches of corporate, I don't want to say corporate America, because there isn't really a corporate America. There's a corporate Earth at this point. These are non-global corporations who have more influence over the American people's government than the American people do, by virtue of their money, because their money gets people elected, and people who want to be elected like to get elected. So just try to put some context on what we just watched with Senator Whitehouse. It was definitely like he didn't ask her a single question the whole way through, but it was day 2 of this, you know, this is day 3 that I've got pulled up now. And he apparently brought all this information, or some of this information, to her over the phone directly and asked, you know, where do you stand on this before the confirmation hearings came, and decided that the American public needed to know. And I think this guy's got balls the size of a fucking airline carrier or aircraft carrier. And, you know, hell yes to what's his name? Sheldon Whitehouse, for having made that presentation that I think, you know, one of the reasons I wanted to show this is because I do have a lot of European and just non-American generally viewers here. And in case you didn't know, this is what our everything is like. You know, you think politics, we're talking about our fucking courts, which aren't supposed to be a political institution. And yet they are completely mired in politics. They are completely they're entirely submerged beneath the tidal waves of the money of corporate influence that is overthrowing America every fucking day. And you just saw some of the dark depths of it and how those different pieces connect. So, you know, maybe you had a certain sense about what America was doing, what was out of whack. Now you've seen a little bit more of the finer thing, and I do recommend going back and watching that video on your own. Posted the link in chat, links at the top. Here's the Senator Whitehouse speaks at second day hearings. You watch that shit, it's hard to be confused about the kind of shit that's going on here. How late am I? And start again anyway, says Dang Dog. All right, so thank you for the cheer, but no, I haven't even gotten into like what I want to say. I've just been talking about what he's been saying about it, just trying to give context to it. Right on political power, but here's evidence to back it up. Princeton did a meta-analysis testing theories of American politics. The will of the public has an inverse correlation on influencing policy as compared to elite special interests. What's going on? I just joined. We're I started watching this shit. I saw on Twitter, fucking deal, and it just showed clips of this thing that we just watched here in full, and I went and found the thing in full, watched that, and then I went, it's still going on today, right? And I pulled it up and watched today's proceedings live, and my God, are you watching this shit? Have you seen this shit? Holy shit, this shit. I don't believe I've ever heard a so-called judge plead the fifth. The bitch showed her notes, and some thought how brilliant. She didn't need notes. I was thinking, what the fuck? Do you need notes for when you're just refusing to answer anything? That was my impression. Was she was getting today in particular, she was getting grilled by Senator Cory Booker, a Democratic representative, and basically he was being incredibly kind, incredibly polite, and basically anytime that he got to the point where it's okay, I've set up the question, now I've asked the question, can you give me an answer? The only thing that she could say is that I can't comment on that because, and then, it wrapped around this what feels, after listening to more than just that, but listening to, an hour's worth of this shit, an hour and a half or so's worth of this shit, just like an amorphous, I'm not going to answer that because fill in the blank, and then I don't answer that. The idea of those are cases that could come before me as a justice, so I can't just say here how I feel about them. And it's like, well, then why the fuck are you here? The idea behind voir direing a potential justice like this, at least to my mind, is let's get you in, let's see how your mind works. And if you won't give us your opinions on, how you think you would rule on a sort of generic scenario of, this thing or that thing coming before you, then why the fuck are we even talking to you? It's one thing to say, well, I can't, make a comment on the, because it might come before me, but that's why we're having this. We also see that it might come before you, and we want to know where you stand on it. And with the understanding, at least from my perspective, I think this is why, she won't answer and nobody will answer anything straight in politics, is that I, as a intelligent American, which is a rare thing, understand that, like, you can give me your opinion from where you sit right now, and then within the circumstance of the case, things might be different. And also, you might hold an opinion right now, but then when you've got the case before you, go into a deep review on, legal precedent and things like that, and then you come out on the other side. You started from one position, you end on the other side. I'm willing to entertain that notion because I have that space in my mind to be like, you're not fucking locked down to what you say right now. It's the law, and the whole job here is to review things. We're not asking you to like be a fucking opinion factory, but I'm asking you right here, right now, what your opinion is, and you are allowed to have one. So please fucking tell me so that I can know where you're starting from before you start doing a review and an analysis of the law. She was asked a number of very straightforward fucking questions by Cory Booker that she just had a dance around the issue answer for, which was presented in a very, she's I like this lady in terms of like her personality and her decor, just the way that she presents, but her actual text was just dancing around and not answering it and saying I can't answer it. And in that case, then why are we even doing this? Like, tell us what the fuck your stances are. And I'll tell you what, this has been 1,000, by the way, these proceedings, just about 10,000 times more legitimate than the last ones that we had, where the nominee was a college date rapist and was appointed by the Republican Senate and Republican president to the Supreme Court, even as basically they were admitting, yes, I believe that woman who says that he date raped her, and then is sitting before us in the Senate, a man who is going to have to, this is Roberts I'm talking about, a man who is going to have to, who's going to have people before him on the court and the whole, like, if someone perjures you in the court, you can send them straight to prison. Straight to jail anyway, not prison, but straight to jail, hold them in contempt. And this man is perjuring himself left and right, up and down, lying, like clearly. It's not like a matter of, well, can you prove that? No, I watched him. I know what a man lying looks like, and especially like you'd say, well, but that's up for interpretation. Go fucking watch the proceedings of fucking, it's Roberts, right? Of Justice Roberts, and tell me that he's not completely full of shit the entire time, that he isn't drumming up tears. The man cried in his fucking, Supreme Court confirmation hearings. And he was still confirmed. And he's a date rapist. you see why people might be concerned about Amy Barrett, regardless of what it looks like on the surface. Indeed, restart your entire streaming career so we don't miss it. Remake every single stream. Groundhog Day for RP. Just as Vice President Mike Pence at the debate, isn't it? He didn't answer one question. I don't usually look into this kind of shit, and I stayed the fuck away from the debates because I don't have interest in either of these motherfuckers. I've heard the one of them lie enough for several lifetimes, and the other one has impressed me zero on his campaign. So I didn't tune in for, two jackasses I don't give a shit about to yell at each other for an hour and a half. Brett Kavanaugh, it's not Roberts, it's Brett Kavanaugh, the date rapist. Thank you. Yes, I don't know how I did that in my brain, but yeah, okay, Kavanaugh, the fucking date rapist. You get me. That was not good, says Ben Surjak. No, it wasn't, and yet they still pushed him through. And the thing was, like, even the fucking Republicans who were involved in that nominating, in the background procedure were like, we had a list of 50 different people, and you whittle it down to like 24, and then really none of them are any better than the other. And when you get the guy up there and then he's like crying and he raped a woman in college and he's got calendars that show that he logged his sexual encounters with multiple partners on, gulp, you would think that at that point you'd say, okay, maybe this isn't the guy. But the problem is it's the Disney syndrome, right? Because the Republicans picked this guy, now he's on stage, falling apart, and now if they show that, oh, we picked a bad one, here's our next one, then it's weakness. It shows weakness is what it feels like. So they can't show weakness, so whatever choice they came up with, even if he's a date rapist, alcoholic, logged my sexual encounters on my calendar kind of dude, we still have to push him through. We've got power, we have got control, we've still got to push him through just so that we don't look like we picked a date rapist and then we have to back away from it because, I guess we accidentally picked a date rapist. So we end up with a date rapist, drunkard, fucking sexual encounter logging calendar dude on the Supreme Court for life. For presumably the rest of, for his life, and for a lot of us, the rest of our lives. Representing the interests of the American people. A born with a silver spoon in his mouth, frat boy, rapist. Time for another CGP Grey recommendation. Supreme Court shenanigans. He touches on the dodging questions and on the Supreme Court as a whole. And here's Let me scroll back up and see some of the other things you guys might have said. What the heck happened, though, if I understand correctly, Supreme Court nominations were unanimously voted in for most of the U.S. history. Seems like only over the last 20 years or so things have gone off the rails. I don't know that to be true, but that's interesting, isn't it? Corporations just should not be allowed to have any sway in politics, but that will likely never happen. Why? Why the Frog Kid won? Because they have so much control over the system now that the two parties in America, how the fuck we end up with just two parties in America, are so addicted, are so stuck with we need their money. And because it's two parties, if one of them said, we're not going to participate anymore, the other one wins by default. It's almost like somebody thought this shit up and set it up specifically so that rich people who have had power since before there was a really set concept of before we had democratic governments, when it was all just feudal systems. It's as though those people are still in control. Their children and they're still maintaining it by virtue of having all of the money. It's as though, and it cannot be broken so long as the Democratic and Republican parties are still, what they are. And those parties can't be reformed because they have also set it up so that because it's just a two-party system, you can't, I do, but most people feel as though, if you are worried about, freedom, democracy, liberty, equality, any of those things, obviously we need to get fucking Donald Trump out of office. First fucking act of office was, let's have a Muslim ban. Let's build a wall between us and the spics. Everything that he has fucking done. Let's pardon the one fucking sheriff who's been convicted in the past 50 years of running a decidedly racist police force on the border. Like, the things that he has done, if you're worried at all about that, if you're worried about closing down the post office, well, everybody's voting by mail. If you're worried about, hey, what's all this? Why is it that like half a dozen people in your original campaign election have been convicted now of conspiracy against the people of the United States of America for collusion with Russia? What's that about? If you're worried about any of that, then you feel as though what you need to do is make sure he gets out, which means that you got to vote for the Democrats, regardless of whether the Democrats give you someone you want to vote for. And that is the entire history of politics in the United States of America. That is everything that we have dealt with within my lifetime. It is not the American people choosing representatives. It is not primaries that result in representatives that the American people want, and then elections where the American people choose who they want popularly. It is a history of the parties positioning people who they want because they are friendly with the party who is friendly with the corporation who's going to make sure that those connections don't get too muddy because we need their fucking money later, into the position of their, who they're going to elect. And then, in my lifetime, the people of America coming out, voting, and then having the other guy get in office because the democracy's so broken, 56% voted for this guy, so that means the other dude goes into office because of how we've set this up. But, they've built it in such a way that if you feel like you're worried about the state of America, you're worried about, white supremacy, you're worried about fucking Trump, any of the million things that I could sit here and list right now that are happening on the Republican side of things, then you have to go out and vote for the Democrats. Not because you want the Democrats in office, not because you think Joe Biden's a great dude, but because they're not Trump. And that is how we vote every fucking year. That is how we vote every fucking year. I get flyers from the Democratic Party telling me, vote the line ticket, just vote, just the box on your ballot that should not be there if we had a representative democracy that says, vote for all the Democrats without me having to pick the Democrats to vote for. That box should not be an option. But the Democrats and Republicans have been in power for so long that we have that option. We can just tick a box that says, vote for all the Democrats. I'm just voting blue or red without actually knowing what these people represent, knowing who they are individually, knowing what their platforms or their history are as individually. Just sign me up to vote for all the people with this color tie. Should not be a fucking option on the ballot. Because independents cannot run against that. Third parties cannot run against that. And that's why it exists on the ballot. Neither of these parties is virtuous. Just one of them is less satanic in the moment. And that is exactly how America runs. Every year, people go to the polls and they vote for someone they don't want, but that they figure to be better than the other. Closer, if still miles away, but closer by a few hundred feet to what they, would like to vote for. And that's the state of American politics. How the fuck did he bullshit his way through that? What? Kavanaugh? He didn't, he could have gone out there and said, yeah, I like to kill people, I've killed some hookers and shit. And the Republican Party was still in the position of, well, it's the Disney syndrome. If we acknowledge that James Gunn actually, that's old shit, and he's apologized for it many years ago and hasn't acted like that for all these years, and we shouldn't have fired him in the first place, then it will appear as though the person who's in power at Disney right now who made the decision to fire him isn't really in power and doesn't know what they're doing, so we've got to commit to that decision, even though clearly we made the wrong decision. We can't admit that we made the wrong decision, so we have to make another and multiple series of wrong decisions on the back of our wrong decision in order to solidify that we don't make wrong decisions around here. That's where we are. When Barack Obama is set to nominate a replacement who would pull the court to the left, Senate Republicans said the seat should not be filled in an election year and refused to hold hearings. That was 9 months from the election. And these confirmation hearings are happening live on October 14th, less than a month from the election. What's the OF your dog? I'll put it on the write-in option. Sorry, what's the name of my dog? I went out to vote for a candidate that nobody knew the name of, that I can't remember the name of, in the first Obama election, because my concerns were healthcare, Guantanamo Bay being shut down, the end of the Iraq War. I went out to vote for that, and since Obama was... I've talked about it before. I don't want to go into it deeply again, but he didn't talk about what he meant by healthcare reform. He just said change, 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 change. I looked for what do you mean by that, and I was stonewalled. They didn't say a goddamn thing. So I went out and found someone who specified what they meant when they said healthcare reform, and it was a socialist party that said, we mean universal fucking national social healthcare, and we think that Guantanamo should be closed down, and we just stop. That's no longer our land in Cuba. We're not going to rent it from Cuba anymore. And